NATO this morning. Hey, Kevin.
Hey guys, I was actually outside earlier this morning, but they had to move us in. They've got some screening happening outside. They don't want us to take pictures of the practice for the big day that's coming ahead here in Brussels. Now, as you pointed out, for the president, that's just the first opportunity to meet with European leaders as commander-in-chief, but also, I think this is important, it's a chance for him to set the tone of the relationship, at least for the foreseeable future. And there are a number of major topics we expect the president to touch on in his conversation today, in particular with the European Council leaders, economic cooperation, the impact of Brexit, and certainly security in the wake of the devastating attack on Manchester in the UK. But definitely NATO will be at the top of the agenda. There's no question about that. And the president has been making a forceful argument that the member nations need to do more. They need to do their fair share. In fact, that's a sentiment shared by his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson.
He really wants to persuade NATO members to step up and fully meet their obligations. I think you can expect the president to be very tough on them, on saying, look, the U.S. is spending 4%. We're doing a lot. The American people are doing a lot. For your security, for our joint security, you need to make sure you're doing your share.
Also ahead on the agenda, the president will be there as there is the NATO headquarters handover. It's a fantastic facility. We'll tell you more about that later in the day. And I think you'll find this interesting. He has a working opportunity today to have a little lunch with France's new president, Emmanuel Macron. Should be a very interesting readout following that gathering. Back to you for now, though.
Yeah, curious how they're going to get along. That's going to be interesting. All right, Kevin, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, the president's visit to Belgium comes after he visited with leaders of the world's three major religions, most recently the Pope in Vatican City.
And Fox News contributor Charles Krauthammer praising the president, saying his trip is an indicator that America is back.
I understand the theme of the three great religions, trying to tie them all together to make it look somewhat non-political. But the real story is not the Vatican. It's not even the Israeli trip. It's the realignment of American policy over Iran, getting this 50 Sunni nations lined up with Saudi Arabia behind us. This is a new day in the Middle East, and it's going to have reverberations for many years. That's the story. That's what, it's a new Middle East right now. America is back.
Meantime, fake Russian intelligence may have impacted former FBI Director James Comey's investigation into Hillary Clinton. The Washington Post reporting that the FBI obtained a document claiming former Attorney General Loretta Lynch assured the Clinton campaign that she would not let the investigation into her private email server get too far. Well, in July, Comey announced the Clinton investigation was over. By August, the FBI concluded that that document was fake, possibly meant to confuse the Bureau.
President Trump widening his search for a new FBI director after it is revealed that former Senator Joe Lieberman is now out of the running. Lieberman, who was previously described as the president's top pick, ran into pushback from Democrats who had some concerns about having a politician running the FBI. The president fired FBI Director James Comey earlier this month, citing his handling of the Clinton email investigation.
Well, Colin Kaepernick out of a job, but the free agent quarterback still has dedicated fans off the field. Dozens of supporters rallying outside NFL headquarters in New York City. Organizers claim that he is not being treated fairly after kneeling for the national anthem and speaking out about social issues last season. Kaepernick opted out of his San Francisco 49ers contract back in March. You may remember he remains unsigned, but is reportedly in talks with the Seattle Seahawks.
All right, well, so much for flying under the radar. Cops busting a pigeon with a tiny backpack full of drugs. This bird nabbed near the border of Iraq and Kuwait in the south of Iraq with nearly 200 ecstasy pills in tow. What an interesting story in so many different ways.
Yeah, well, let's go back to one of the big stories that we've been following. This Fox News alert, a massive manhunt intensifying for more terrorists linked to the Manchester killer and his family.
This is, we learned brand new chilling details about the brother who was planning his own major massacre.
Yeah, Greg Palcott is live for us in Manchester with the family's worldwide terror ties. Good morning, Greg.
Heather, Rob, that's right. New information about the person behind this terrible attack and more memories for those who were killed. I'm going to step aside while camera Pierre shows you the mountain of flowers that over the last few days has built up here in the center of Manchester, to the 22 who have been killed, also remembering the 64 who still remain in the hospital after this incredible attack. Again, police very firmly on the trail of this attacker's network. 8 more arrests, all told, 8 in custody right now. Raids this morning, arrests overnight. Clearly, they are thinking that there was a network behind this man, that he did not act alone. This as we get new haunting images of 22-year-old Salama Bedi. Also, leaked information and images indicate that he was wearing at the time a complicated, sophisticated backpack, explosives filled very carefully with shrapnel that exploded and was aimed to do maximum damage. Also detained in the last 12 hours or so, his father and his brother in Libya. His brother, under somewhat questionable detention by one of the militias there, allegedly says that A, he knew all about the plot that his brother Salama Bedi was going to commit, and that ISIS knew about it too. His father reportedly with at least second-hand links with Al-Qaeda. He was involved with the uprising there against Gaddafi and militias there. This as overall security in the UK ramping up. Remember, Theresa May, the Prime Minister, has said that this is a heightened security alert, the highest terror alert, and that means troops are on the street fearing that perhaps another attack might be imminent. Again, finally, as attention paid to the victims, 22 dead. We've learned of 3 more identities, a 14-year-old girl, a young couple, 19 and 17. 1 minute of silence, 2 hours from now, here across UK. It will be a very emotional time. Back to you, folks.
It certainly will. Greg, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
And as world leaders look for some kind of solution to global terror, pop star Katy Perry says we need to look no further. She may have the answer.
I think, like, the greatest thing that we can do now is just unite as people, as, like, fan bases, all of it, you know? I think that the greatest thing we can do is just unite and love on each other, and, like, no barriers, no borders. Like, we all need to just coexist.
Well, you think that would work? Critics are now bashing her hug it out approach as oversimplifying, to say the very least, a worldwide crisis.
Yeah, Perry was a staunch supporter of Hillary Clinton's failed presidential campaign and is a vocal member of the so-called resistance movement. There you have it.
And as terror rocks the United Kingdom here at home, the TSA is now ramping up security.
Cheryl Casoni from our sister network, Fox Business, here with the major change now being tested to screening procedures. Hey, Cheryl.
Yeah, hey, good morning, guys. So, attention pack rats. That bag that you're taking to the airport this summer might need to be a bit lighter, with new rules coming from the TSA about which things you'll have to remove when you get to the checkpoint. And the new procedures are now in the testing phase, but if they're implemented, it will require all food and most electronics have to be removed and placed on the bins separately. So here's what the rules may look like. Travelers would remove electronics bigger than cell phones with the goal to cut down on manual bag checks. The TSA says the change is not associated with the laptop ban, by the way, on flights originating from the Middle East. Also, the TSA is going to be testing a new machine that verifies travelers' IDs. Some of the airlines, by the way, are testing facial recognition technology. This could be all part of what the TSA is doing. So testing is underway at small airports like Colorado Springs, Boise, Lubbock, Texas. There's also, though, we should say, some TSA checkpoints in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Boston, Detroit, Fort Lauderdale, even Puerto Rico, that are starting to reflect what may become national rules. For instance, I'll give you an example here. In Kansas City earlier this month, screeners asked passengers to remove all paper from their bags, even notepads. But that test reportedly didn't go too well, and the TSA dropped the idea. The bigger issue, of course, to remember here with airline baggage fees in place, passengers don't want to check their bags, so they're loading up their carry-ons. Officials admit it has created a big issue for them because an overstuffed bag takes more time to screen at the checkpoint by the security official. The TSA at this point says the new procedures, if enacted on a permanent basis, would not, by the way, affect those with TSA pre-check or global entry.
Yeah.
Just a little thought, some advice for travelers out there.
Just now figuring out that that's not taking a little bit longer as people try to stuff everything they can in their carry-ons.
Yeah, you and your protein bar, Heather.
Exactly.
It's out.
Thank you, Cheryl.
You bet.
All right, let's go over to Janice. We're talking weather and some storms moving into the East Coast, I guess. I've felt the rain coming.
Yeah, some tornadoes as well that we need to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same system that is moving into the Northeast, as Rob mentioned, rain and thunderstorms. Okay, across the Southeast, we had the potential for severe storms last night. It's moving into the Mid-Atlantic. You see the temperatures in a lot of cases, especially the eastern half of the country, cooler than average. Satellite radar imagery, a little unsettled across the Rockies, and then there's our system moving into the Mid-Atlantic in the Northeast. If you are traveling today, make sure that you are calling ahead, checking online, because we are going to see some delays and perhaps some cancellations. The storm reports, over a dozen reports of tornadoes across the Southeast, and all of this is going to lift across the Northeast with a marginal risk of severe storms. And then we also have that new system moving out of the Rockies that could potentially bring strong to severe storms as well. Back to you, Rob and Heather.
All right, thank you very much, Janice.
You got it.
Yep, we'll check back with you later. And the time now is 9 minutes, almost 10 minutes after the top of the hour, specifically. And special election spotlight. All eyes on Montana. That's where a heated contest just took a very twisted turn. The Republican candidate now fending off attacks, accused of assaulting a reporter.
Also, brand new questions this morning about the Manchester massacre. The bomber, a son of a refugee. Why our next guest says it's with assault. Greg Gianforte, forced to defend himself, accused of body slamming a reporter in Montana. It was all picked up on audio. So how could this affect the neck and neck special election? Griff Jenkins is live in Washington, D.C. with the very latest this morning. Hey, Greg.
Hey, good morning. What's going on? Listen, this is something in Montana. Republican Greg Gianforte was hoping to enter today's special election for Montana's sole congressional seat, vacated by now Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, with an eye on victory over his Democratic challenger. But after an incident with a reporter from the Guardian newspaper last night, Gianforte is now facing misdemeanor assault charges in a re-energized Democratic Party just hours before the polls open. The incident was caught on tape and witnessed by our own colleagues, Alicia Acuna and her team, waiting to interview Gianforte. Take a listen to this tape.
We'll talk to you about that later.
Yeah, but there's not going to be time. I'm just curious if you have
Okay,
the
speak
right
with
now.
Shane, please.
But you don't.
I'm sick and tired of you guys. The last time that came here, you did the same thing.
Alicia says that Gianforte did indeed grab reporter Ben Jacobs by the neck. Jacobs, after the incident, tweeting that he was body slammed and his glasses broken. Gianforte's campaign, though, is defending the incident in a statement, saying, quote, after asking Jacobs to lower the recorder, Jacobs declined. Greg then attempted to grab the phone that was pushed in his face. Jacobs grabbed Greg's wrist and spun away from Greg, pushing them both to the ground. It's unfortunate that this aggressive behavior from a liberal journalist created this scene at our campaign volunteer barbecue. The Democratic Congressional Committee not wasting an opportunity here, jumping on it, releasing Facebook ads calling on Gianforte to drop out of the race now, and on the Republican Party to denounce Gianforte. Already 3 of Montana's major newspapers are withdrawing their endorsement of Gianforte. And just something to watch, Rob and Heather, is the absentee vote today as it comes in. About a third of the vote has already been returned, and they have no-fault voting, so those votes will count. Guys?
Griff Jenkins, live for us. We'll continue to follow it. Thank you. Let's switch back to this. Just days after the tragedy in Manchester, many are now asking the same questions that candidate Trump did back in 2016.
Go to Brussels, go to Paris, go to different places. There's something going on, and it's not good, where they want Sharia law, where they want this, where they want things that, you know, there has to be some assimilation. There is no assimilation.
So why are refugees having such a hard time assimilating to their new culture? And does this make the world more vulnerable? Joining us now to discuss terrorism and national security analyst at the Heritage Foundation is Robin Simcox. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Robin, first of all, let's bring this up. These series of full screens that we have on some attacks that have happened. And this is really telling. This is in Paris back November 13th, 2015. You had two individuals became radicalized in a Molenbeek ghetto. 130 people ended up killed. Then in July 14th, 2016, the Tunisian national who drove a truck into a crowd, killing 84 people. And then in Berlin, December 2016, failed asylum seeker Anis Amri. He drove a truck through a crowded Christmas market. You'll remember that, killing 12 people. The video was horrifying of that one. So, Robin, what is the problem, and why are these individuals, these refugees, not assimilating into the cultures where they end up?
A few things, really. First of all, you have ISIS. Because there's such large refugee flows at the moment going into Europe, ISIS have very specifically targeted those refugee flows to infiltrate, to get their pre-existing operatives into Europe so they can carry out some of the attacks that you've mentioned there. But then I think you also have to say, because of the scale of the numbers coming into Europe, it's almost impossible for any of the receiving countries to begin to deal with this and to begin to deal with integration and assimilation issues in anything like a responsible way, because in Germany alone you've had almost 2 million people come into the country in 2 years. I think any country in the world would struggle with that amount of flow. But when you have some of these European countries which are very uncertain about identity issues, have a sense of guilt about colonial past, perceived or otherwise, then that just makes it even more difficult.
So since you're saying you have the out-of-control numbers, no way to control it, what would your answer be? To close off the borders until there is a way to figure that out?
Not close off the borders entirely, but I think you don't have to be an open borders advocate to say that the numbers coming into Europe are, I mean, they're crazy, to be honest. And this has been something that's been discussed in the UK for years, where you've had poll after poll of people saying they want immigration cut very, very significantly, and yet politicians essentially being unwilling or unable to act on that. And I think that's how you see a big divide opening up between the political class and those people that they're governing.
So what about when it comes down to those Muslims who believe in Sharia law? I was reading an article, I think it was in the National Review, it said upwards of 2/3 of Muslims in the countries from which we accept refugees here in the United States believe in Sharia law, and Sharia law runs exactly opposite of our beliefs here in America.
Well, this is where you have to say, and the refugee situation, I think, is an especially pertinent one. If Europe is accepting in people in such large numbers from people fleeing from Syria or parts of East Africa, the Middle East, wherever it may be, there has to be, part of the social contract there is that there has to be integration into the core values of the country which you are arriving. And obviously the core values of the country which you are arriving in Europe, and in the US of course as well, do not revolve around Sharia law. They revolve around the rule of law, modernity, democracy, human rights, and a sense of identity that doesn't involve being dictated by religion.
Yeah, the belief that people have a right to govern themselves, amongst other things. Robin, thank you so much for joining us. Very difficult topic to tackle in a short amount of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, 20 minutes after the hour. Violent gang members allowed to enter and stay in the United States under President Obama's
a parade in New York City. Now, the event celebrating Oscar Lopez Rivera. His group claimed responsibility for more than 100 bombings across the U.S. But a New York City councilman told our Tucker Carlson that Rivera is a, quote, freedom fighter, not a terrorist.
You obviously don't follow this in any detail. You're glomming on to the guy because he's a fashionable communist, but he's also a terrorist.
But again, Nelson Mandela was viewed as a terrorist till 2008.
But this isn't, are you really comparing him to Nelson Mandela?
Well, Rivera spent decades behind bars, but was just released from prison after President Obama commuted his sentence. And a bombshell new report revealing that the Obama administration allowed illegal and violent MS-13 gang members into the U.S. Senator Ron Johnson says that Customs and Border Protection documents show 16 teenagers caught crossing the border in 2014 admitted to being a part of the deadly gang. But that didn't stop the feds from placing them in community homes across the country. Immigrant children poured into the U.S. and received benefits under President Obama. Rob?
All right, now to a Fox Business alert. Graco is recalling more than 25,000 car seats. The webbing apparently can break in a crash and may not keep kids restrained, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. The recall affects certain MyRide 65 convertible seats made in 2014. Graco will notify owners, and dealers will provide a replacement harness free of charge. Well, Google wants to watch how you shop even when you're offline, apparently. The tech giant announcing plans to track how much money people spend in physical stores after clicking on digital ads, thinking that the ad might have driven them to the store. Google Attribution trying to sell more online advertising, saying Google says it won't be able to examine.
And Friends First, we always appreciate it. I'm Heather Childers.
And I'm Rob. Here in just hours from now, President Trump will attend his first NATO summit.
So let's get right to Kevin Corke, who is inside the International Media Center at NATO with more. Good morning, Kevin.
Hey, good morning, guys. It is a huge media center, by the way. I don't know if you can see over my shoulder. I mean, this thing goes back, it feels like 100 yards. Obviously, trade, economic cooperation, and security coordination will certainly be part of what we expect the president to be talking about as he meets with European leaders today. But there are a number of other issues that I think we want to keep an eye on. The Paris Climate Accord as well. In fact, I see the president is stepping up.
His NATO summit, or well, he's going to be there later, actually. He's going to go meet with the newly elected president of France, Emmanuel Macron, a more center, not so far left or right candidate that won the election there over Marine Le Pen, who was a far-right candidate. Yeah. We'll see if they have any common ground.
You have to trust us. He is inside that car, we promise.
Yeah, we just caught him getting in.
Just caught him. So, Kevin, let's go back to you and talk about some of the other things that they're going to be discussing in the G7 meetings.
Yeah, I was mentioning the Paris Climate Accord, and I know at home people probably glaze over, they hear about that, but I do believe there's a pretty significant economic component to the Paris Climate Accord as well, so we expect the president to talk about that. And I think not only that, I think you'll probably hear him speak a great deal about NATO, not just its relationship on the continent itself, but frankly the U.S.'s contributions to the alliance. As you probably have read and heard over the last several days, the U.S. is contributing about 4% of GDP to the NATO alliance, and that keeps peacekeepers where they need to be. But it's also supposed to be a goal of other nation members to give at least 2% of their GDP to the alliance. And right now, only 5 nations, including the U.S., are actually doing that out of the 28 nations that belong to the NATO alliance. So I expect the president to hammer home that point, as well as this idea that NATO will now increase its contributions in the anti-ISIS effort. In fact, his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, talked a bit about that just yesterday.
NATO joining the ISIS coalition, we do think that would be a really important step for them to take. They've been an observer, but they've become more and more engaged, you know, in the actual fight to defeat ISIS. I think the Secretary General Stoltenberg feels that would be an important step for them to take. There are a couple of countries.
And of course, we're also keeping an eye on the NATO headquarters handover. It's a beautiful facility. That plus the working lunch with France's President Macron. And did I mention the president's on his way to Italy for the G7? Yeah, pretty busy day, I would say.
Just a whole lot going on. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. We appreciate it. Well, also breaking, a massive manhunt is intensifying for more terrorists linked to the Manchester killer and his family.
Yeah, this is, we learned brand new details about the brother who evidently was planning his own jihad, his own massacre.
And Greg Palcott's live for us in Manchester with the family's worldwide terror ties. Good morning, Greg.
Heather, Rob, yes, as we stand in front of the growing memorial of flowers in the center of Manchester to those killed in the attack Monday night at the concert hall here, we're learning more and more about the attacker and his support network as the police go after them. We've learned of more arrests overnight and raids this morning. All told, 8 people are under arrest now, believed to be a part of this network that the police now say are actively supporting or actively helping this bomber. This as new images of Salam Abedi emerge and new details about how he committed his dastardly act. Images showing a backpack full of explosives and shrapnel meant to do ultimate massive damage to anybody near him, and in fact it did. Detained also overnight, in the last 24 hours or so, the father and the brother of Salam Abedi in Libya. The brother allegedly claims that he knew about the attack and also knew about ISIS links to the attack. No confirmation of that from Libya. Also, the father allegedly had links to groups associated with al-Qaeda in the past, so a lot more questions on that front. This as overall security in the UK continues to be ratcheted up, security level at its highest. That means troops are out on the street. That means a possible threat of an attack is seen here. As the victims remembered, in 1/2 hour, there'll be a minute of silence here and across the UK for the 22 killed. 64 remain in the hospital. Back to you, folks.
Yeah, so heart-wrenching hearing from all those families.
Certainly is, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, take a look at this. A woman jumps on the hood of her car to stop thieves from driving away. This is so dramatic. Look, they were trying to get away with her SUV. You can see a man dressed in black sneak into the white car as the woman in red pays for her gas in Milwaukee. But then she immediately jumps up on the hood, bangs on the windshield, trying to stop him. But the thief tries to drive away anyway. Then after a few seconds, he finally ditches his plans, jumps into a getaway car. The woman then jumping off her SUV, running to catch it as it rolls into traffic. But the crooks did manage to get away with her cell phone and her purse. Hopefully her cell phone has GPS on it.
That woman is awesome.
Very brave.
Can you believe that?
She likes her car.
She's a hero for herself. That's amazing. All right, a miracle here as a sick little boy finds a heart donor just hours after a visit from the First Lady, Melania Trump. Ms. Trump tweeting a picture of herself holding the child's hand with the hashtag blessings and faith. She released a statement saying that her heart was filled with joy after learning the news that he got the transplant. Mrs. Trump speaking Italian to the children in the hospital. She says she will continue to pray for them. That's great.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah. The phone calls, emails, and personal information of countless American citizens.
Well, the brand new report showing more than 1 in 20 internet searches conducted by the NSA involving Americans violated constitutional privacy protections.
All right, joining us now to weigh in on this, GOP strategist Philip Stutz and liberal analyst Kathy Aru. Thank you guys so much for coming on so early this morning.
Good
morning.
I guess we'll start off with this. I mean, I think a lot of people might be able to see both sides of this. First of all, it clearly appears to be something that is quite illegal. But on the other hand, I think people, sometimes say, this is the way you keep Americans safe is by checking on everybody. That's what the NSA does.
Yeah, I mean, listen, in 2011, the Obama administration loosened the rules on how they can collect data on Americans. And since that time, there's been a threefold increase in the search on Americans. Part of that unmasking that Susan Rice did came out of that. When you talk about, you guys just mentioned it, a fifth or 1/5 of the people, or excuse me, 5% of the people now have been violated, their privacy have been violated. This is a strong ruling by the FISA court for sure, and it was so strong, and it's not partisan that the ACLU has now come out and condoned this as well.
Kathy, what do you think?
Well, there's so much we still don't know. I could find very few reports on this, so it's still being uncovered. And Congressman Rand Paul was saying if this is true, if this truly happened, then it's a big deal. So I think there's a lot of ifs in the air right now. We're not quite sure. And in an era after the Patriot Act and after September 11, we did expect this as Americans, that they were going to survey us and have surveillance. So we're not quite sure yet. It hasn't come out yet. So I'm expecting a lot more reports to come out and tell us if this is the truth and what really is happening, if this is true.
Well, what we do know, though, Kathy, is that the October 26, 2016 notice informed specifically the court that NSA analysts had been conducting such queries in violation of that prohibition with much greater frequency than had been previously disclosed to the court, and that's a quote.
Right. So it is being uncovered. As I think as the days go on, we will find out even more. But as a time after the Patriot Act, this is what is to be expected. So hopefully they were doing it for our own security, and that's why we've been safe. That's why we haven't had another September 11 on our watch, on the president's watch. So hopefully they're doing it for our own safety. I could only hope that they're doing it for us.
And that certainly was something that President Obama touted as one of his major accomplishments, was keeping America safe during his term, or as safe as it could be. Philip, over to you for a second. I mean, obviously, Republicans are going to jump on this as, you know, a breach of our rights, especially from the left, which, you know, always seems to talk about how you need freedom from this kind of oppression and stuff like that. But I'd have to say, personally, as a person that I don't do anything wrong, I don't have really any skeletons in the closet. If this is going to keep me from getting blown up on the subway, I don't really have much of a problem with this kind of surveillance. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, my point on this, and I kind of laugh because it sounded, my counterpart over here is using it's like the Bush counter talking points from a few years ago, but these rules that were loosened by the Obama administration were done in 2011. They were not done in 2001 or 2002 after 9/11. So I'd be interested to know, why were those rules loosened? If you read the court filing, and I looked over it, it does say that the NSA came out and said, we're not sure if we can stop doing this, but we sure will try. Well, that's not what the FISA court said. The FISA court said stop doing this. It's a violation. It could be a violation of the Fourth Amendment, and that's the most important thing to look at.
It could be. I mean, that's the question. It could be. There's a lot of ifs, if. So we still don't know. It could be a big deal.
Yeah, it's a news story. Guys, thanks so much for coming on early this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, hours before the polls open in Montana, a Republican House candidate is charged with assault.
Yeah, so how could this affect the neck-and-neck special election there in Montana? Griff Jenkins live in Washington with the very latest. Hey, Griff.
Hey, Rob and Heather, good morning. Greg Gianforte, the Republican candidate, thought he was on the path to victory, but after an incident with a reporter from the Guardian newspaper last night, Gianforte is now facing misdemeanor assault charges in a re-energized Democratic Party hours before the polls open. This altercation caught on tape. Take a listen.
Talk to you about that later. Yeah, but there's not going to be time. I'm just curious if you
have speak
right
with
now.
Shane, please.
But you don't.
Sick and tired of you guys. The last time that came in here, you did the same thing.
Our colleague Alicia Aquino is waiting to interview Gianforte and confirm that this incident happened. Jacobs tweeting that he was body slammed and his glasses were broken. But Gianforte's campaign defended the candidate in this statement, saying, quote, after asking Jacobs to lower the recorder, Jacobs declined. Greg then attempted to grab the phone that was pushed in his face. Jacobs grabbed Greg's wrist and spun away from Greg, pushing them both to the ground. It's unfortunate that this aggressive behavior from a liberal journalist created this scene at our campaign volunteer barbecue. Now, the Democratic Congressional Committee jumping on the opportunity, releasing Facebook ads calling on the candidate to drop out of the race and the Republicans to denounce him. 3 of Montana's newspapers withdrawing endorsements, guys.
Wow, that's some crazy audio.
Yeah.
All right, Griff, thanks so much.
Thank you, Griff. We'll follow up on that as well. But right now, let's check in with Steve Doocy to see what's coming up on Fox and Friends. And Katy Perry thinks we should just long-awaited analysis of the Republican plan to repeal and replace Obamacare is released. And even though it is expected to reduce the deficit, Democrats are still finding a way to say, no way. Go figure. Cheryl Casoni from our sister network, Fox Business, here now to make a little bit of sense of all of it for us. Right, Cheryl?
Well, Heather, yeah, there you go. Go figure. The Dems are mad about this one, of course. Good morning again. The Congressional Budget Office did release late yesterday its score on the repeal and replace bill that passed through the House earlier this month. And both sides of the political aisle went to immediate attack mode. The report found that the bill would lower the average cost of premiums for the insured, and it would reduce the federal deficit by $119 billion over the next decade, primarily through its cuts to Medicaid and private insurance subsidies. Now, the CBO also reported in its analysis 23 million fewer Americans would be uninsured under the plan by 2026. But remember, that includes those that choose not to sign up under the exchanges. So that point is being hotly debated right now. Still, Democrats Democrats like Senator Bernie Sanders immediately took to social media to slam the GOP bill, Sanders tweeting, quote, in just 3 words, "What a disgrace." Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said the GOP should, quote, throw the bill in the trash. And we should say the White House late last night did issue this statement. Here you go. History has proven the CBO to be totally incapable of accurately predicting how health care legislation will impact health insurance coverage. What's more alarming is yesterday, HHS reports based on data from the Obama administration show that average individual market premiums more than doubled since 2013. I will leave you with this, Heather. Remember that many insurance companies have been pulling out of the exchanges because they just couldn't afford it.
Absolutely. And you were just reading my mind, Cheryl, because that's what we're going to talk about. Yet another health insurer company is dumping out of Obamacare. Starting next year, Blue Cross Blue Shield will no longer offer plans in parts of Kansas and Missouri. The company citing more than $100 million in losses since 2014. Rob?
All right, Heather, thanks. President Trump getting a warm welcome in Brussels, Belgium overnight. Just hours from now, he'll attend his first NATO summit. So, will global leaders be swayed by the president's tough talk on his first foreign trip? Will they finally come together, NATO that is, and try to eradicate terrorism as a group? Joining us now to weigh in on this, GOP strategist Noel Nikpour. Thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess we're going to start on, I mean, he wants to get NATO more engaged in this fight.
Right,
and get everybody to join together to just eviscerate this group. Right. Is he going to be able to do that?
You know what? This is going to be a real test of President Trump to see if he can do that. So far, so good with his foreign tour. If you'll look at, his speech in Saudi Arabia, which, that was a telltale sign of how he's going to be perceived. So I think that, with him in NATO, seeing if he can get everyone together, I think that he has got half a chance to show strength here. Yeah, and
he's trying to get everybody to 2% spending on military defense, which is going to make the world stronger and safer as well.
Right, right.
That's a big thing, too.
Yeah.
One interesting thing that I read this morning by the BBC said that the Germans and the French are going to agree to this fight against ISIS. But both Germany and France say that it is a symbolic agreement, that they are agreeing. And I just thought that was so interesting because I don't know of 2 countries that have been more inundated by terrorism, Western countries, than France and Germany. Well, and for them to say that it's just symbolic, almost like they don't want to go to fight against ISIS.
Not only that, but I mean, this is an insult because look at what just happened in Manchester. Look what's happening over there. Yeah. And especially France. Remember the Nice attacks that they had with the car and everything. Right. How can they use that kind of language, and say that?
Yeah, and to me that's interesting too. And you would think that these leaders would be jumping at the bit for a chance to get in there and drop some bombs. I remember after which attack was it where the French bombs had from Paris with love or something written on the bombs. I mean, people love that.
Yeah, and they're a major target. The sidewalk cafes, and Lord knows what it's doing to terrorism. But everyone has to come together globally. This is not just isolated. This is a global problem.
This should be a fight that everybody is proud to get behind.
Absolutely.
Let's broaden it out. Let's go to the trip in general. The president's been extraordinarily busy. I mean, he's handling 3 different major religions and how many different countries and all these different summits and leaders. And the G7 is going to be in Sicily this time, which is beautiful. But he's doing pretty good so far, and he's been able to avoid a lot of negative media scrutiny, at least internationally. He's still got the domestic problems. But what did you think about the meeting with the Pope and how that went? Because I think a lot of people were wondering how that was going to go.
Well, I thought it went great. I'm glad you brought that up because, he and the Pope had exchanged a lot of pretty nasty tweets. So a lot of people didn't know how this meeting was going to go. But I think a lot of it has to do with when you meet someone in person. You can say something about someone from afar. Yeah. But when you actually meet the person and you get to know each other, I think both the Pope and Trump have come away with a better understanding of what each person represents.
Yeah, you saw that first picture where the president's smiling ear to ear, and then the Pope just kind of had that look on his face like, oh boy. I mean, he was probably nervous about that meeting, I imagine. But it came out, everybody came out all smiles and with compliments, so that was great.